Everybody, welcome back to another fun and exciting Algebra 2 class. Today we'll be in lesson 9.7. We're going to be discussing the unit circle. A few lessons ago when we were talking about special angles, you may have heard me refer to the unit circle, but here we are. We're finally there. And the biggest thing that you have to know when you're going into understanding about the unit circle is you have to know about the special triangles. What are the special triangles? Well, we just talked about them a couple lessons ago. It's the 45, 45, 90 and the 30, 60, 90. Now, what we've done, and you can look on page 441 in your book if you want to. What we've done is we have limited these down to using in the circle, in the unit circle, we have made every single hypotenuse to be 1, okay? And remember radians? Remember when we talked about radians? This is kind of dealing with radians because this would be 1 radius right here, okay? And so kind of all those things are starting to come together here. Well, if we go back here and we look at what is the ratio when the hypotenuse, when the r equals 1, the ratio is square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2 to 1, okay? And that is for the 45, 45, 90. Now, in the 30, 60, 90, when the hypotenuse is 1, it's 1 to 2, square root of 3 to 2, and then 1. Okay? Those are important to understand. We're gonna get those a little bit clear in just a second, but here's kind of what it means. This is the x, this is the y, and this is the r. X, Y, R, okay? And actually that's a small r. So this kind of a little bit of a preview of where we're going with this. So let's look down here. So here's the unit circle. And if we have this as a radius of 1, this is our hypotenuse with a radius of 1. This is the x and the y right here. So the x and the y, we could substitute that in and we could say, okay, our x, this is a 45. Okay, so this is the 45, 45, 90 right here. Okay, so in this one, our hypotenuse is 1. Our x is square root of 2. Whoops, I need to write that a little bit better. Square root of 2 over 2. And our y is square root of 2 over 2. In other words, remember when I said that this, it equals this? In the 45, 45, the legs are equal. Okay, so there's your equal legs right there. Now, if we can remember this, if we can memorize this right here, I want to show you something. What happens when I draw that 45 over here? Okay, it's the same thing. We just transfer all of this data over here except for what? Well, except for it's negative on the x and not negative. It's positive on the y still because we're going up. What happens when we transfer it over here? Well, that was a bad one. There we go. Okay, that's still bad. Sorry. There we go. So when we transfer it over here, well, it's the same thing, but they're both negative now. Negative square root of 2 over 2. Negative square root of 2 over 2. Now, what about when we go over here to the fourth quadrant? Well, now it is positive on the x, negative, or positive 2 square roots of 2, and it's negative on the y, negative 2 square roots of 2. Okay, so our data didn't change, just our signs changed. Okay, our information didn't change. Why not? Because every one of these is a 45-degree angle. They're just 45-degree angles in different directions, and that's why the signs are changing. Okay? Now, we can also do that with the 30, 60, 90. Okay? Now, I want to show you this, and this might be just a little bit of overload for you. So I'm going to first of all show you the top half, and then we'll go to the bottom half. Now, the overload part might be right here with these radians, okay? Now, we haven't really fully discussed radians yet, but we kind of have. So here's what they did. They wrote the angle in degrees and in radians. They converted it. You remember how to convert it? Remember the divided by 180 and all that, and we canceled the pi and stuff? Okay. So all this, you cannot pay attention to this right now. Okay? Just pay attention to the degrees. So that's the 30. Look at what we have here on the 30. The x is square root of 3 over 2. Where did that come from? We'll look back up here. It came right there. The square root of 3 over 2. That's the 30, 60, 90. So that's the x. And you say, no, that's the y. I understand that. Okay, let me show you what's going on here. So if we go back here, I said it was the x, and it is the x because look, on the 60, it's the x. The 1/2 is the x. But on the 30, the 1/2 is the y. And it depends on which one that you're looking at that time. But because look, the 30, so if it's there or if it's here, what's changing? What's changing is your theta. In this one, okay, the 60 is the theta. In this one, the 30 is the theta. Okay? So that's what's changing right there. But here's what you need to memorize. And you need to memorize these. You need to memorize 30 degrees equals square root of 3 over 2 for the x, 1/2 on the y. 45 equals square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. 60 equals 1/2 and square root of 3 over 2. Now, let's look over here in the second quadrant. Okay, so let's look at 30 when it occurs in the second quadrant. Here's 30 in the second quadrant. How is 150 30 in the second quadrant? Because it's 180 minus 30, and that's 150. So the reference angle 30 over here, all right, is 150. So look at it. It's exactly the same. Square root of 3 over 2, square root of 3 over 2. The only difference is we're now negative. The x is negative. Why? Because we're going to the left on the Cartesian plane, so it becomes negative. Let's look at down here in the bottom. Same thing. Here's the 30 in quadrant number 3. The 30 is right here. The 30 is the 120. How do we get that? 180 plus 30 gives us our 120. And so here it is in the third quadrant. And here it is with both of them negative. Negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. Here it is in the fourth quadrant, and it's positive x, negative y. Okay? But here's what's not changing. The values of these are not changing. Only the signs are changing based on the quadrant that it finds itself in. Okay, this is the unit circle. Once you understand the unit circle, you'll understand that the values don't change, just the positive, negative signs. Those are the only things that will be changing. Okay, all right, let's jump down here and let's solve this one. Now, we're going to solve this without our calculator. I want to know what is the theta of 30 degrees. And I want to know, let's solve for, if you want to, look in your book at 442. So I want to solve for the sine, cosine, and tangent of these. Well, we'll just wait on the tangent. Let's just do sine and cosine for right now, okay? So I want to solve for the sine and cosine of these. How am I going to do that? Okay. Well, I'm going to go to the unit circle. I'm not going to my calculator this time. We could go to our calculator, right? We could plug it into the calculator. But when you plug this into your calculator, guess what it gives you? So I'm going to my calculator, and I'm going to type in 30, and I want the sine of 30. It gives me 0.5. Now, in that case, it works. But let me do the cosine. I want to get one that doesn't come out even. So let me do the cosine of 30. So if I do 30 cosine equals 0.866025, what we end up doing is writing 0.866, and we had to write bacon with that. Why do I have to write the bacon? Because it's we round it off. Okay, so we round it off. We don't want to round off. We want to write what's called exact values. What's an exact value? It's the square root. It's not rounded off. It's not a decimal point. Okay, so we're going to use the squares. So how do we find the exact value of this? We can't use our calculator because it's going to round off. So what do? We go to the unit circle and we go to 30 degrees. So here we are on our unit circle at 30 degrees. And the x is, remember, this is always 1. Can't really see that. This is always 1. Okay? This is our triangle. So our hypotenuse is 1. This square root of 3 over 2 is our x. So that is right here, and this is our y. This is this one right here. So if we want to do sine, what is sine? Well, sine equals, so we're going to do sine first. Sine equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. So what is the opposite? The opposite is 1/2. So we would do 1/2 over 1. What's 1/2 over 1? It equals 0.5. I would leave it in 1/2 because it wants exact value. When it wants exact value, it wants it in a fraction or in a square root. So now let's do the cosine. Okay, so with cosine, it's going to be square root of 3 over 2. Square root of 3 over 2 over 1, or just the square root of 2 over 3 is our cosine. Both of those will be positive. Okay, we'll do the same thing with our 45-degree angle. We'll just go up here and look. It's square root of 2 over 2. So our sine is going to equal square root of 2 over 2 over 1, because remember, it's always over 1 because the r is 1. So we don't have to write that over 1, so there you go. And then the cosine is going to equal the same thing. Why? Because it's the 45. And look, the 45, the x and the y are the same. Okay, let's go down here and let's do one more thing. Well, maybe two more things before we're done. So now we want to find the sine and the cosine of 120 degrees. Now, here's what I would do. I would go back up to our unit circle, and I would find this at 120 degrees. The other thing that you could do, if you don't have this unit circle available to you, and I'm going to put this in the comments, you're going to be able to download that PDF. It's not really, it is in the book. It's in the book on page number 442, but it's not really all filled in on page 442. You can go fill it in if you want to, but it's not all filled in. So if you don't have this available to you, how can you do this? Well, what you can do is you can say, okay, I'm in the second quadrant, so I'm going to do 180 minus 120. 180 minus 120 gives you 60. So we're dealing with a 60-degree angle, but we're in the second quadrant. So what is negative in the second quadrant? Okay, cosine is going to be negative. Okay, so our sine is just going to be the 60-degree angle. So go look at the unit circle for 60 degrees. Again, we don't have to touch our calculators. We're just going to 60, and there it is. So what is the sine of 60? The sine is the y over r, so it's square root of 3 over 2. So the sine is going to be square root of 3 over 2. Over 1, but we don't have to write that because the r is always 1 in the unit circle. So there we go. What's our cosine of 60? Well, our cosine of 60 is negative. Why is it negative? Because we're in the second quadrant. Cosine is negative in the second quadrant. So go back up to your 60 and find your cosine. It's 1/2. 1/2 over 1, or just 1/2. So here it would be negative 1/2 because we're in the second quadrant. Okay. All right. So now what we want to do, this is the last one, I promise. Okay. We want to find in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, we want to find sine of 1/2. Okay. So in quadrant 1, let's figure out the sign of 1/2. So it's 1/2 over 1. Or what is 1/2? The sign is the opposite over the hypotenuse. And so what is the opposite? The opposite is the y. So let's go up here to our unit circle and let's find where the y is 1/2. Well, there it is right there. Okay? So y is 1/2 there. And so this is going to be a 30-degree angle. Okay? That's in quadrant number 1. Okay? What is it in quadrant number 2? Well, to get to quadrant number 2, we would do 180 minus 30, and that would be 150. So in quadrant 2, it would be a 150 degree. Okay? So this is 1, and this is 2. I mean, it's complicated and it's not complicated all at the same time. Now, all we're doing is looking at a chart and remembering which quadrant is positive, which quadrant is negative. All students take calculus. That will help you right there. Remembering that all are positive in the first one, only sine is positive in the second one, only tangent is positive in the third one, and only cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. Okay? All right, that's all I've got for you. I hope you learned something there. You may have to slide that back 2 or 3 times because some of that stuff is just a lot of things going on. Hopefully you understand the unit circle. If you don't, go back, watch it again. Do some of these practice problems. Work through these. Go back and look at the ones that I did and then try to do some yourself. Okay? All righty, we'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.